What is up, tavernites, tavern heads, tavern people? I am Tyler Randall. I am your host of this podcast showcast. It is called Tavern Talk, and I am the Reverend Sergeant Tyler E. Randall. I'm using both of my titles for pomp and circumstance. Welcome. I know it's been a minute, but I have something very good for you, and hopefully it's something that you might actually want to pay attention to, or at least is entertaining. Okay. So, have you ever been reading a book or listening to a podcast or something, and you come across they reference another author or another work, and you go, oh, I've never read that. I want to know more about that. I want that thing. Well, and seldom do you ever have it sitting right next to you. Well, this happened to me. By the way, before we go ahead, this is a tavern, so we must drink. I'm drinking coffee this evening. Delicious. Need to wet the whistle. Anyway, so I was actually watching a video by Mark Dice, who is a media commentator, and he also wrote this really cool book a few years ago called The Liberal Media Industrial Complex. And it it goes through instances throughout the years of where the media has lied, and a lot of it is about Trump, because that was the main focus of the book. Is second half of the book is how they attack Trump supporters. There's a whole chapter on it, but it basically goes through how there is a cabal of people who are in big tech and the mainstream media who are shaping a narrative and censoring everything else that they don't want to get out. Obviously, I mean, this is common knowledge. He's writing about this, in 2018, 2019. So he made mention of an author called Neil Postman. Now, Neil Postman, if you went to college in the 90s or the early 2000s, you probably, have come across some of his work. What I will go through really quick, he mentions Neil Postman's work. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death. Okay. Now, very quickly, I want to read you just a synopsis of one of his other books. I know this rabbit hole gets rabbit holey really quick. The synopsis of his second work in 1992, it's called Technopoly. And Postman defines Technopoly as a society which believes the primary, if not the only, goal of human labor and thought is efficiency, and the technical calculation in all its respects superior to human judgment, and that the affairs of citizens are best guided and conducted by experts. Does that sound to anybody like the liberal media industrial complex? Does that sound like Facebook? It fucking does to me. For the sake of the thing, we must worship the thing and listen to what the thing tells us to do. It's literally the God is dead. God is dead is basically what it is. Okay. Not to get all super philosophical in the beginning, but basically, okay. Just listen to the rest of the synopsis for Technopoly. Postman argued that the United States is the only country to have developed into a technopoly, what we now call technocracy, because it has infiltrated our government. He goes on. He claimed that the U.S. has been inundated with technophiles who do not see the downside of technology. It is dangerous because technophiles want more technology and thus more information. However, according to Postman, it is impossible for a technological innovation to have only a one-sided effect within the ever-increasing amount of information available. Postman argues that the information has become a form of garbage, fake news, not only incapable of answering the most fundamental human questions, but barely useful in providing a coherent direction to the solution of even mundane problems. Now, if you think that he's just talking, he's like a Luddite, or he's a one-eyed technophobe, as he puts it in his. He talks about how Luddism actually was trying to protect and keep our, our traditions, our culture, right? That what keeps us human, right? So less machine, more human. There's real philosophical leanings in all of his writings, but I will go down that rabbit hole another time. I have the book in my cart. I have not read it yet. I want to talk about his first work that everybody has read. This guy's like prolific writer, magazine writer. So, by the way, if anybody's listening, go ahead and comment. I will read your comments and talk about your comments. But this is going to be more of me like going down the rabbit hole, ranting, because I'm going to read you the foreword to Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. So I was listening to the audiobook just to set it up. I was listening to the audiobook, ironically, not knowing when this book was written. Okay. And after listening to the foreword, I looked up and it was written in 1985. And by the way, a lot of the references are kind of dated. Like he makes reference to he makes reference to Michael Jackson. And you're like, wow, I mean, Michael Jackson's still relevant, I guess, kind of, but not in the way that he was talking about. So it's actually kind of cool. Like I was really enjoying it. So without further ado, let's go. I'm going to show this here. Well, not like that, but how about like this? Oops, I don't know how to do this. See, technology is kind of like the bane of our existence here. Shift 5, bam. So I just did that, and that didn't work at all. But I'm going to read this to you while this is up on the screen. Okay. The foreword to Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. We were keeping an eye on 1984 when the year came and the prophecy didn't. Thoughtful Americans sang softly and praised themselves. The roots of liberal democracy had held. Wherever else the terror had happened, we at least had not been visited by the Orwellian nightmares. But we had forgotten that alongside Orwell's dark vision, there was another, slightly older, slightly less well-known, equally chilling, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Contrary to common belief that among the educated, Huxley and Orwell did not prophesize the same thing. Orwell warns that we will be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. But Huxley's vision, no big brother is required to deprive people of their autonomy, maturity, and history. As he saw it, people will come to love their oppressors and to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think. Does that sound like anything you know? Tell me. It does to me. It goes on. I will tell you. There's the last paragraph. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. Orwell feared that those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared that there would be those who would give us so much information that it would reduce it. That we would be reduced to passivity and egoism. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared that the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared that we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared that we would become a trivial culture, preoccupied with some equivalent of the feelies and orgy and the porgy and the centrifugal bumble puppy. That's a quote from the book. I haven't read Huxley's book yet. As Huxley remarked in Brave New World, revisited, the civil libertarians and the rationalists who are ever on the alert to oppose tyranny fail to take account man's almost infinite appetite for distractions. In 1984, Huxley added, people are controlled by inflicting pain, but in Brave New World, they are controlled by inflicting pleasure. In short, Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared it's what we love will ruin us. And Postman states his book is about the possibility that Huxley, not Orwell, was correct. Now, I know I said a lot of stuff, and it kind of like verbal diarrhea, and I was tripping over myself because I was so excited, and that's only the second time I read it. But it does sound eerie that this was in 1985 he was writing this. Oh, shout out to Angelo. What's up? He said I should have smoked weed before this podcast. It would have made it a whole lot more, entertaining, maybe. And honestly, it's kind of ironic because I'm doing a podcast on the internet.com, on simulcast between social media, trying to talk about how, and I'm going to go into it in a second, how, video, the intersection between telegraphy and photography is destroying the written word. Hilarious. As always, Elizabeth with us. Hello. Distraction is the name of the game. That is right. She says, look here, something new and shiny. That's right. Look over here. Look over here. What have we been dealing with the last few years? We've been dealing with fake news, Russian collusion, all these hoaxes that are fake. And then once they're found out to be fake, they're just like, oh, well, now this. In Postman, in his book, I'm almost done reading. I think I'm in the last 2 chapters. But What Postman describes is the now this phenomenon, saying that it reduces his thesis is basically that television has made politics and the news and discourse, social discourse in general, nothing more than vaudeville, than entertainment. That, as prophesized by the now this. So you're in a news report, it's like there was a horrific accident and 3 people died, and now a child is motherless. And now the weather, as if it would just to gloss over. Okay, one is definitely a tragedy, but why tell it to me if the next thing up is just going to be, it's going to be sunny tomorrow? Well, and what's the utility? It's and when the telegraph came about to prominence, and they were putting up wires all over the country, he describes how, some princess in Russia has the whooping cough, and how does that affect your day-to-day life, right? The Queen of England dies. Now, I know I do have a friend that is from England. He would probably be, probably shook. He would probably, mourn the death of his queen, because he grew up and that's their monarchy. They have that in England. We don't have that here. Although I would feel solidarity for him, it really wouldn't affect my life because of deference. But we would no doubt be inundated with, the queen has died, God save the queen, oh my, who's gonna succeed, blah 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 blah, all this other. And it really has nothing to do with our day-to-day life here in America. Now, I digress. So, sip of the coffee. Now, Mark Dice references Neil Postman. I read nearly entire book of Neil Postman amusing ourselves to death. And then Neil Postman in I believe the second chapter references an author I'd never heard of before. He references Lewis Mumford, and you're going to be very familiar with Mumford in a moment. And he talks about how Mumford basically laid the foundation for how we think about technology in a moral sense and in a philosophical sense. And he talks about the watch and the invention of time. Time is invented by humans. A man is the one who wrote down what time it is. Before that, I mean, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right, in 6 days. Well, how do you know what a day is at that time? I mean, right immediately after the Bible, before the clock was invented. How do you know what a day is? Well, the sun's out. Okay. Well, how do you know when winter is? It gets cold, the crops die. Well, how do you know when spring is? The flowers start to bloom and animals start to rut. Okay. These conceptions of time are just holistic and natural, right? We have no concept of the minute, the second, the nanosecond, right? And today, a nanosecond, people know what a nanosecond is, right? Because that's how fast our pictures and our telecommunications can go, right? It is so immensely fast that we don't really have a frame of reference without a clock. And that's what a clock does. It gives us a frame of reference for time, and it's capturing time. We're taking control of it, as if knowing what time it is gives you power, because it does, because we've molded our society around it. And this is what Mumford talks about. And honestly, I haven't gotten too far into the book yet, but I was reading. So it was written in 1934, a book called Techniques and Civilization, right? And that's what the most predominant cover looks like. All right. 1934, reprinted again, I believe in 63, and then again in 2010. And since I'm not sure if it's out of print, but it's still widely available. Very expensive, so it may be out of print. It was for the paperback. It was about $40. So I highly recommend you get books, get physical books, because they cannot be canceled. Okay, unlike Fahrenheit 451, another one of Huxley's and Orwell's contemporaries. But I digress again. So what Mumford talks about there's a foreword from 1963, there's a foreword from 2010, and then there's the foreword from 1934. I read through all that, and it's basically just talking about, okay, here setting it up, and it was set up, and in the entire book, it seems that he only makes 4 corrections, and they're so minor, it's ridiculous that since 1934, they could only find 4 things that were minorly incorrect. It's like a copper mine instead of an iron mine in Colorado, when the steam engine was invented, like 1 year off. So it's kind of crazy that this guy did his did his research. He talks about how in the first draft, it was done in 1930. And then in 1932, he started to get into the techniques of architecture, which he wrote at length about when he was alive. He wrote for the New York, what was it, New York Times or the New Yorker? I didn't quite remember off the top of my head, but he was very heavily into culture, arts, society, technology, and architecture was this big thing. But he started to zoom out from architecture, right? He started to make sure, Elizabeth says, make sure to list all these books in the comments. I will for sure. So I don't know how to spell, but I will list them all before I leave, and I'll make a list of them so that everybody can come back to this and find it. Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. So if we go back to, where's my banners? Boom. Technology, philosophy, morality. Here we go. So we get to Mumford, who is talking about, the second draft of the book, he's zooming out and he's realizing that, he doesn't want to focus too much on architecture. He wants to focus on the techniques of machines in society and how societies have become ready to accept the machines, right? So why, and Postman touches on this, why in Europe at the time that it happened did the Renaissance happen? And why did the Industrial Revolution happen in Europe at a specific time? Is it because they had something that other civilizations didn't? No. Other civilizations had come up with things and then lost them long before Europe ever had roads or irrigation, okay? So it's actually really interesting how it's the society that was ready to accept and integrate the things into their daily life. And not just for the sake of them, but to actually to radically change their lives and to live their lives in culturally in a certain way. Okay, so kind of like how farming, it's like, don't just farm just to farm. We're farming to feed the nation as an idea. Radically changes the way agriculture is done, right? And that's why today, when the society we live in, only 1% of people actually farm, because they've come to such an efficiency that they only certain number of people need to do it because the labor is divided up by the machines. I digress once again. If you would allow me, and if I'll play some, really nice and easy listening music, if I can, I want to read the objectives portion of this book. So after the 3 forewords, we come to objectives. We haven't even gotten to the meat and potatoes of what he's writing about. He's going to tell you why he's writing about what he's writing about, and it's actually super duper interesting. And I may interject here and there to just kind of color commentary some of the parts of it as I understand it. Okay, so oh, come on, Tyler, why am I covering my face up? I don't get how that, I can't get it to move over. Oh well, that would be really cool if I could do that, but I can't because I suck. So here we go. Let me turn the comments on so I can see them. All right. So I'm going to read the objective section of Lewis Mumford's Techniques and Civilizations. Me. Where's your music, Tyler? I thought you said you were going to play some cool music. Background music. There we go. Can you hear that? I can hear it. If it's too loud, let me know. My buddy Adam making a comment before we start reading. Only 2% of meat we eat is farmed in the U.S. Well, really? We import that much beef? Or meat in general? Is it pigs and chickens? I know we raise a lot of chickens. It's pretty cool. If the music's too loud, let me know. Here we go. During the last 1,000 years, the material basis and cultural forms of Western civilization have been profoundly modified by the development of the machine. How did this come about? Where did it take place? What were the chief motives that encouraged this radical transformation of the environment and the routine of life? That were the ends in this view. What were the means and methods? What were the unexpected values that have arisen in this process? These are some of the questions that the present study seeks to answer. Okay, so he's setting up. Okay, the music good, cool. He's setting up where he's going. He's giving you questions, and that like most essays, I guess this is a little bit more than an essay. You start with a question, or you start with an answer and then work your way back to the question. So He continues, while people often call our period the machine age, now this is 1934, mind you, very few have any perspective on modern techniques or any clear notion as to its origins. Popular historians usually date the great transformation in modern industries from Watts's supposed invention of the steam engine. And in the conventional economics textbooks, the application of the automatic machinery into spinning and weaving often treated as an equally critical turning point. But the fact is that Western Europe, the machine had been developing steadily for at least 7 centuries before the dramatic changes that accompanied the quote-unquote Industrial Revolution, before it ever took place. Men had become mechanical before they had perfected complicated machines to express their new bent and interest, and the will to order had appeared once more in the monastery, the army, the counting house, before it finally manifested itself in the factories. Behind all the great material inventions of the last century and a half, it was not merely a long intentional development of techniques, it was also a change of mind. Before the new industrial processes could take hold on a great scale, a reorientation of wishes, habits, ideas, goals was necessary. So what he's saying here basically is they had I'm reiterating what I said in the past. They had technology. They had the lever. They had, I mean, look, if we look at, well, I don't want to spoil, but if you look at, Rome had roads, aqueducts, but why in Europe at the exact time and place that it happened did complicated machines spring up and then continue? They didn't just stop. They didn't just make the loom and then stop. So we continue. To understand the dominating role played by techniques in modern civilization, one must explore in detail the preliminary period of the ideological and social premonition. Not merely must one explain the existence of new mechanical instruments, one must explain the culture that was ready to use them and profit by them so extensively. For note this, mechanization and regimentation are not new phenomenon in history. What is new is the fact that the functions have been projected and embodied in organized forms which dominate every aspect of our existence. Other civilizations reached a high degree of technological proficiency without apparently being profoundly influenced by the methods and aims of techniques. All the critical instruments of modern technology, the clock, the printing press, the watermill, the magnetic compass, the loom, the lathe, gunpowder, paper, to say nothing of mathematics and chemistry and mechanics, existed in other cultures. The Chinese, the Arabs, the Greeks, long before the Northern European had taken most of the first steps toward the machine. And although the great engineering works of the Cretans, the Egyptians, and the Romans were carried out mainly on an empirical basis, just to see if they could, that's my interjection, these people plainly had an abundance of technical skill at their command. They had machines, but they did not develop the machine. It remained for the peoples of Western Europe to carry the physical sciences, the exact arts to a point no other culture had reached, and adapt the whole mode of life to the pace and capabilities of the machine. How did this happen? How, in fact, could the machine take possession of European society until that society had an inner accommodation surrendered to the machine? Now, he says something here that's actually really cool. Adapting the whole mode of life to the pace and the capacities of the machine. Okay, the pace and capacities of the machine. They adapting your whole life around it, like this. We adapt our entire lives around the pace of the smartphone today. Now, think about that in conjunction with what Postman has said, okay, and what Huxley said before that. And I don't think, I mean, I think it'll be a little bit long-winded to keep going because that's basically the end of it. Now, there's another 2 pages of that, but it's more driving the point home. He says what he says there. So it's kind of cool if we take an amalgamation of all these authors, right? What can we take from it? Well, basically that we have reached a point where Postman has foreseen. We have let this the will of the machine take over the will of the human being, and we have let it shape our culture outside of what anthropologically we have seen is possible for a society to maintain itself, right? And I know it sounds like I'm just saying words As most of my critics like to say, I sound like I fucked a thesaurus, which sounds like a really, really bad. Never mind. but I say that to say that we see our technology rapidly expanding, and we're bending our economies and our societies to it in a way that's not healthy, right? And it's erasing our culture. I mean, just owning a book today in 2022 is a radical action. Okay, I'm amazed that they even still print them. Okay, somebody's buying them, right? Maybe it's just a bunch of boomers who are just putting them on their shelves for decoration. I don't know, but I'm glad that they still print them, because nothing beats the smell of a book. Okay, I'm telling you. And so I look forward to reading this and then getting excited to make a new podcast. It was exhilarating to first, go from Mark Dice to Postman to Mumford and then to Huxley, which I've only read passages of, but and read interviews of Aldous Huxley. And what I find even more interesting is they did Brave New World like on Hulu or whatever, and it like bombed completely. I'm sure that they tried to inject it with a bunch of social justice bullshit, but even then, it's so fucking sad that we have somebody holding a mirror up to us and we're willing to break it just so we don't have to look at it, right? I'm not saying I'm above being a hypocrite, because I love my stupid smartphone, dude. I absolutely love this thing. I play on it all the time. I'm constantly engrossed and getting sucked in by and just inundated with information, but I'm trying to curate the information streams that come in. Okay, I'm trying to only keep it to certain things. Now, one of my friends always telling me, politics is going to kill you, man. Politics is going to kill you. That very well may be true. I want to stay in the realm of politics because politics is the way that we all get along. Okay, politics is the way that a group of people can work together, right? That's how they communicate to each other politically. All right, we're all political animals, humans anyway. I don't know about dogs or cats. I don't know about the high command of cat chancellors, but I don't know. I'm trying to make a joke to make it seem light, but it's really not. It's really sad and scary and dark. The times that we live in now. Everybody says that the times are the end times. They've said the end times are coming, in every age. But I do think I think we live in an extraordinary time, to say the least, where we have all of this, like Postman said, we have all this knowledge and all of this foresight, but we're just being slammed with so much shit, and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and that's not to say that the dying television is still pumping shit out on Fox is still putting TV shows on the air like anybody's fucking watching. They're not, but it's just there. And there's just so much. That's why misinformation is taken over. Now I'm going to transition into the COVID part, because we have known things for so long to be scientifically and empirically true and unchangeable, though they are falsifiable. They stand the test of science, right? That natural immunity is better, always, in every case, with zero exception, to an inoculation. Now, an inoculation is even better when it's actually based on the said virus or what have you, that they're actually trying to inoculate you from, the vaccine, right? When it's neither of those things, obviously, it's not going to work as good. And they have fought so hard for 2 years to tell you the opposite of that. And now that they cannot, because people like me have fought back, and people like some of you that are going to watch this or are watching this fought back and said, no, we refuse to let you change the definition of immunity, of vaccination, to change the definition of anything without our consent. We refuse, because science exists to be tested, not to be believed. The only thing we should be believing in is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's right, I said it. And I know people are like, I don't care. All of science exists because of Christian men, and that's just true. At least when we're talking about the Renaissance, why it all came together. As I tie it back into Postman, why it happened in Europe, because, and it's the same thing with our country, right? Because our society is built for a moral people, for a Christian people, really. But for a moral people that is based on the Judeo-Christian tradition. That's why our society worked for so long. And the technology, it seems, is just the thing that the thin end of the wedge that they're trying to drive between us and God and each other, really, because if you can separate us from God, then you can separate us from each other. This is your God now, as I'd like you to believe. I'm serious, man. I know it sounds like I'm waxing philosophical and I'm saying things that in circular fashion that don't make sense. But if you just take a little, I'm just going to reflect on everything that I just kind of laid out. Reading Mumford, Postman, Dice, Huxley. We don't have to let the technology tell us what to do. We are supposed to tell it what to do, not just have the machine for the sake of the machine. I don't know how many more ways I can say that, but that idea has just been kicking around in my head so hard that I wanted to share that with you. And maybe, hopefully, it's kind of giving you something to think about. So I hope I'm spelling this right. I'm going to comment the books. And so Neil Postman, what is it? Amusing Ourselves to Death. You can check out now if you're done listening. I'm pretty much just going to type all these comments in here and then dip out. But if anybody has any other comments, because I don't know how to do it after the fact, or I guess I could just comment afterwards when it's over, once it's posted, because I'm a dum-dum. But I guess that's all I have for you today. It's a real short one. And for those of you that are wondering about my shirt, yes, it is a middle finger. It is a beautiful tattoo work. His name is Wayland Rivas, and he is the lead singer of a band called A Killer's Confession. He was formerly the singer of a band called Mushroom Head. You might have heard of them. Also, I am wearing Coleon Noir's I Will Not Comply hat. That's right. And I won't, because fuck you. Hell yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth. And with that, I say adieu and fuck you, but not really. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate all the interaction, especially from Elizabeth, Adam, and Angelo, my man. Pack that bowl. And I'll let you know. I'll give you a heads up on the next one, Angelo. So that way you can be nice and high before I start talking about technology's role in human society. All right. Until the next time, I've been Tyler Randall, Reverend Sergeant Tyler Randall, and this is Tavern Talk. Peace. I said peace.